Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Sunday, the January 19th, and I have some really fun, exciting things to put together for us. Playing off of the solar flare symptoms that I've been putting out there for, I don't know, 2 years now. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the solar flares, we're going to look at Zach Bush in water, and we're going to look at cortisol, and we're going to sort of weave them all together. So I'm really thankful that you're here, and we're going to play with this. And if you haven't liked or subscribed to this, then please do, because it helps my algorithms. It helps me with YouTube. So let's get going. So, first, it's been such a quiet week for solar flares, kind of thankfully, because there's been so much going on. But I wanted to show you, here is the space weather. So this is last Sunday. And then, as you can see, we've just been in this sea level. And then we had two M class flares, an M7 on Friday the 17th and an M1, which was the highest flare registered for that day. And I think we're sort of starting to bump up into something else. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we spent some time today on Sunday the 19th and on Monday the 20th dealing with some massive solar flares, some X class. That wouldn't surprise me at all based on how things have been bumping around. Now, in addition to the flares, there's been some solar storms, they've driven the KP index up. So we've been noticing some uneasiness. So between the collective, the energy of the LA fires, the approaching inauguration tomorrow, the fear factors around that, whatever agenda, whatever belief systems you have, there's just been a lot of fear around that. We're in a spot where things are bumping around a bit, which makes sense, right? So about 2 years ago, I listed out a solar flare symptoms, and I got 17,000 hits, which was just amazing and still going on. Occasionally, I'll still get a comment coming in on those flares. And then I've updated them as we've gone along, right? And it seems like the higher the flares, the more symptoms we get. Well, that makes sense because it means that that whatever is hitting us is affecting our bodies, right? So I also spoke over the last few months about these codes, these photons, these plasmoids that are in the flares that are coming through the sun that directly affect and activate our cellular system. So whatever is coming from those flares is hitting all sentient beings, right? And igniting our cellular structure into some sort of a coded release, coded awakening, coded something. So what we're experiencing here on Earth is a great deal of internal uncomfortableness and stirring. So what I thought I would do is show you that, coming from different sources, there is this energy coming into our bodies. It's energetically feeding us and bringing us information, right? This is the same priestess card in the light seers. It's coming in and doing something to us, right? I like this one. We call this the flaming vagina in the tarot reading. Here's this pineal gland that's just like on fire, bringing us information through our pineal gland, which is what the star actually connects us to, because when it goes through our pineal gland, it goes into our internal system, right? And this is the death card in Osho, which is that, what's happening to us is that we're going through this process of transforming and coming out as the phoenix. Now, the phoenix has been associated with the LA fires. The phoenix has been associated with a great deal of sort of changes that are coming. So it makes sense that we're sort of in that, right? So when we're talking about these codes coming online, I've also paired that in the last couple of weeks with what if, and done this, and also did this in the discussion group. What if our levels of sensitivities, our clairs, our high awareness, our ability to react energetically, whether it's highly sensitive, whether we're intuitive, whether we're energy reactive, responsive, that what's happening is we shift and activate, we're more empowered and we're shining more because we have very important job to do, which is to bring this information that's coming through us that we're birthing. She's one of the few pregnant symbols in or I think the only one in the Thoth deck. And she has this staff that she's bringing down, which is putting the diamond energy into the ground, and where it's hitting, it's turning green and changing. This seems to be what we're doing. This is the Princess of Discs. We also have the Osho, which is the Emperor, which is, sort of with all of the passion and energy, breaking the chains of conditioning and structures that have held us, right? And so, what's what we're noticing is that whatever we see or we observe or we pick up and notice as far as patterns is a lot what I've done is a lot like what I've done this week, which is all of a sudden a lot of cortisol information started popping up on my social media. And I hadn't put that together with the solar flares and high levels of reactivity. So I did that today for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect the dots, and we're going to focus on what happens when we come online, what happens when our intuition starts to work for us. Because those of us that are sensitives, we can call them sensitives, intuitives, creatives, the softer souls, the meek in scripture. It's so interesting. We're shifting, right? And we're coming online. So when we're activated, when we're empowered, when we're shining, right? When we are just glowing with the energy skills that we have, then what happens is everything that we experience starts to shift inside of us. So this is not, it's almost like the um like the butterfly, that crystallis stage where everything hurts, and it's like you're breaking down everything, and then you're coming out in a much purer form, right? So let's look at high sensitive beings and know that they struggle with some very key things. We struggle with keeping our sympathetic and parasympathetic in balance, right? We struggle with fears because there's usually a lot of trauma that happens in these lives of ours as we're being trained. What do we do with that? Oh, I'm experiencing this. I know what it's like to be yelled at, to be hit, to be physically violated, to have all of these things that happen that cause us these adrenal activations, right? And so whether they have happened to us in the past or we've been exposed to a lot of watching it, we have this reaction in our body, and we produce an adrenal cortex hormone that's called hydrocortisone, right? And so this hydrocortisone balances our carbohydrates, our metabolism, our protein metabolism, and these things get out of sync. So what we notice is that those of us who have high levels of energetic sensitivity also have a lot of autoimmune issues and a lot of physical pain, mental anxiety. And, what we struggle is hormonal balance, overload, stress, anxiety, because we don't fit within the programmed matrix, because we have skill sets that are different than what the norm says. It's almost like we're fuzzy and we're adaptive. Like, think of it the way that an amoeba sort of moves around, and we're trying to fit into a structure that says this is who you have to be and what you have to do. So it doesn't work. So I'm going to say either we don't fit into that environment or we've been disabled, which is my favorite theory, right? We've been intentionally disabled so that we can't access, where is she? So we can't access these intuitive skills. So we can't see the truths. So we can't really use our voice. So whenever we start to get better at using this, something catastrophic happens: a shooting, a fire, a flood, a car explosion, all of these things that make us rock and go out of sync with our intuitive skills. It makes sense. So when we're looking at how all of this is connected, I also ran across Dr. Zach Bush, and he was doing an interview, and it's interesting because he was talking about How come when you're doing surgery on a body, there isn't water that comes out if we're 72% water? So he was explaining how the water in the human system is the 72% of the human system that's water ends up being this gelatinous system that holds cells and holds organs and moves through it together. But that gelatinous substance has a frequency and it pairs with our internal DNA and it emits our personal frequency and puts it out there. So then we end up putting this, putting this into the world around us. It's so interesting, right? So, whether you're experiencing or struggling with, or you've been derailed with these enormous frequency shifts, what if we can tie them to the flares? That the flares are opening up our cortisol level. Oh, fascias. Oh my gosh, let's not forget how the fascia can just ache when it's activated or when we're holding information in there. So by looking at it as frequency shifts, by looking at it as like, hey, this is what I've been feeling like mentally. This is what it's been like emotionally to try to tune this out. This is where I get lost in myself. This is how I over participate in the world. This is where I've been isolating and keeping myself away from humans for a long time. What if it's time to step out of that victim energy, which is these things keep happening to me, to I'm being processed, I'm growing, I'm shifting, because we're shedding and we're morphing into who we're supposed to be internally. Makes sense. And also that our cortisol is off the charts because if something rattles, we go into stress, we start overproducing adrenal, which puts cortisol into the system. Does that make sense? So I have this entirely phenomenal, great list to go through with you. And I'm just going to untape this because this bugs me being my notes taped up here. Because if I don't stay on notes, I think you even see me go into very long videos. Okay, now, before we go into the actual cortisol solar flare symptoms connected, what I want to do is remind you, number one, we have a discussion every Tuesday, and you can go down below in the discussion and click the link and come and join us, or you can come in through Patreon. The Patreon's really affordable, $11 a month, and you can come into the discussions. You can read the posts that we're all sort of sharing and be a part of that community. So by all means, think about joining my Patreon. The other thing is I'm just started doing an enormous amount of tarot readings, which I like, which is what is happening to me, right? Kim saying that, not to me. What am I experiencing and what's the message it's giving me and how do I manage that? I'm doing a lot of tarot reading on that under the surface, what might be going on, right? So if that's something that's helpful, or if you just want to support me, you can buy me a cup of coffee or click to one of the PayPal or Venmo links down below so I can keep providing this information because I think it's really important, right? Okay, so thank you. So let's go to the list. This is, I can't make this up. This is probably the most fascinating discovery I've made in months. The list of high cortisol imbalances, irritability and overwhelm. Anxiousness and worry, right? Feeling exhausted and fatigued all the time, bloated and have belly fat or midsection, just like I've done everything I know how to do and I can't get that belly to move, right? A tense neck or shoulders, sugar, salt, cravings 24 hours a day. I'm doing this. I eat salt, then I want sugar, then I want salt, then I want sugar. And it's just, I have to just, I almost need to put a lock on the kitchen to keep me away from binging on salt, sugar all the time. Thinning hair or hair loss, waking up between 2, 3, or 4 a.m. and having a hard time going back to sleep, dehydrated and always thirsty, dried, cracked lips, a white tongue, or marks on your tongue from your teeth, receding gums, bad breath. Weight management is really difficult. A dependence on caffeine to activate in the morning because there's just no energy, right? Brain fog, moody, emotional, Immune issues, autoimmune health problems, jaw clenching, and which goes to the stiff neck, right? A metallic taste in your mouth. So these are the flare symptoms that I've been listing out. So what we're doing is we're taking high cortisol in the solar flares and we're blending them together because they're connected. They have to be. These symptoms are just, it's almost like I can overlay the exact symptoms for solar flares and put them on top, right? Because we're adjusting and we're shifting and our bodies are looking for something to adapt, to hold on to, right? And we're in a world that's externally in a lot of turmoil, right? On the surface, right? And there's a connection between how I hold myself internally and how I experience the world outside. Now, some of the other things is dizziness. Um, uh, I love that someone just said cortisol levels. I never thought about that. Neither had I, and I was a little triggered, maybe even a little pissed that somehow I had this algorithm that came in and started to say that cortisol, and I was like, well, what you marketing to me or something? And then I went, oh, cortisol. Okay, so when we have these symptoms, the key things that we need to do is we need to get magnesium in our body. We need to get zinc in our body. We need to get selenium in our body. We need to get sodium and potassium in our body, right? We also need omega 3s and we need vitamins B and C just at the core. Now, please go online, even just on Instagram, and put in cortisol and look at all of the foods that fall into these categories that you can eat without even going to supplements. You know, because the magnesium is going to soothe. It's going to feed that gelatinous water inside of us, and it's going to give us some relief, right? So what we're looking at is owning this, right? You know, in the full, owning this and actually doing our own energy management and saying, you know, like I'm showing some tremendous courage to just flip this and say whatever's going on with my body is manageable by my choices and my behaviors, right? And that there's no fear. I love this one. Both of these ladies are naked. There's about 3 of them in the deck. But what I like about her is that she's got the tiger by the tail, which is the fear, and her hair and her momentum is just sweeping her upwards, and there's the absence of fear in her body, right? So okay, so tips. Trying to keep it, I keep going over, but there's no way to talk about that, to build this and talk about this in a shorter amount of time. I apologize. Okay, so key tips, you know, to sort of look at our stress triggers, right? Number one, get out in the morning sunlight and put the sunlight into your pineal gland. Like that first sunrise or that early morning walk, just turn and face and let the sun come into your pineal gland and sort of fill your tank with that sun. It is a beautiful tool that works all the time because what we're doing is we're bringing the access of the sun straight into our body, right? Piggybacking on that is time outside, time in nature, time in soil, being grounded. The more we can get out in the natural phase of integration, the way nature does it, the easier it is. The more time we spend inside, the more difficult it is to self regulate or to manage our energy, especially when we feel triggered, right? Number 3, meditate, pray, journal, create peace and quiet time where you can do some internal reflection, like, oh, okay, I know what's going on, and just think, just feel, just shut your mind off and stop thinking about the scary things, but just sort of like open it all up and access the inner you, right? Number 4, go to bed early. You know, there's no reason. I've been heading to bed between 9 and 9:30, which is so early for me. And I noticed that I'm sleeping really much better because I'm starting earlier. So go to bed early, sleep more, get naps, and do rest. Now, when we're saying take a break and do some rest, we're not saying, boy, that would be really nice. And if you have the luxury to do that, that's not what's happening. It's almost as if we're recovering from a major surgery. We need to recalibrate and we need our rest, right? Number 5, avoid food stress, whether it's allergens or stimulants or binging or the yo-yo of salt and sugar. Avoid that food stress in your body, right? Number 6, my favorite, eat dark chocolate. Eat dark chocolate because it has the elements of cacao in it that we need, right? And do and get yourself to a really authentic, good cacao ceremony. Buy some cacao. I find that cacao in the morning is a really good way to sort of recalibrate my energy and start me off. The same thing with a green tea matcha. It's not the same elements, but it has the same sort of support and effect, right? And number 7, 7, eat pumpkins. Here's the list: pumpkin seeds, broccoli, leafy greens, avocados, kiwis, blueberries, beets, chickpeas. Make sure that you have sea salt in there because what you're doing, and again, go to the looking up how to rebalance, how to nurture and take care of your cortisol levels. There's so many memes, so much information on social media that is so valuable, right? So go after the foods. Know that the food choices you're making is how you back up your body. I have grapefruit on here, dill pickle juice for cramping. Um, and it's super, super important to create quiet internal and external. So to be able to find ways to quiet your mind. Some people are microdosing on mushrooms, on cannabis. They're avoiding alcohol. They're avoiding caffeine. They're upping their magnesium. There's just you have to know what your system needs you to do, right? And to have a lot of compassion because what we're really doing is we're creating this internal masculine who creates the structure. Okay. And the masculine's assertive and proactive and protective and stable and passionate and solution focused and responsive and curious and realistic. These are all the qualities of the emperor where we have to take those in and say, hey, I am an incredible intuitive, an incredible energy reader, and I need to take care of my body differently. So that said, come join us on Tuesday and discuss this. If not, I will see you next Sunday and take care of yourself. Deep, deep compassion for what you're going through and what this must be like for everybody else. Take care. Bye bye.